A quick like and subscribe really helps our channel grow and allows us to bring you even more amazing content. Thank you for your support.
You never really know how far someone can push you until you're standing on the edge, staring into the abyss with no intentions of turning back. I learned that lesson the hard way when I found myself not just wishing for revenge, but actively plotting it. But let me take you back to where it all started, an unremarkable Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the sun hangs lazily in the sky, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement of our suburb. I was sitting in my living room, surrounded by the familiar comforts of my home, faded throw pillows, the scent of lavender wafting from the candle flickering on the coffee table, and the gentle hum of the world outside filtering through the open window. But all I could feel was the tight knot of anger coiling in my stomach. I remember how that anger felt, like a storm brewing just on the horizon, ready to break. I had just walked out of my job at the local art gallery, my dreams trapped behind the glass walls that surrounded my desk. It was a dead-end position, to be honest, but I loved it. Every day, I immersed myself in the vibrant colors and textures of creativity, hoping one day to showcase my own work. And that's when Jake appeared, a slick, ambitious new director who swept in like a breath of fresh air. At first, I was captivated by his easy charm and infectious laughter, but soon it became clear that he was more interested in climbing the corporate ladder than nurturing the talent around him. He wasn't just an annoyance, he was a thief, an opportunist who took what wasn't his to take. I had poured my heart and soul into a project, a passion piece that had taken months of sleepless nights to create. I could still hear the echoes of my excitement as I unveiled it in the gallery that night, only to watch as he casually claimed it as his own in front of our colleagues, basking in the applause I'd worked so hard to earn. My heart sank as I realized that my dreams were nothing but stepping stones for his own ambitions. But the ultimate betrayal came when he decided to borrow my car for a quick errand, a beautiful, vintage Mini Cooper I had saved for years to restore. It was more than just a car, it was a symbol of independence, freedom, and all the hard work I had put into building my life. When he returned it, I was too naive to notice the slight change in his demeanor, the way he smirked when I took the keys from his hands. It wasn't until I caught a glimpse of it parked outside my building a few days later, with fresh scratches along the side and the unmistakable odor of smoke permeating the interior, that the gravity of what had unfolded hit me like a freight train. And that's when the storm inside me began to rage. The air turned electric, and I could feel the rage boiling over, a fire igniting my resolve. This wasn't just about the car anymore, it was about reclaiming what was mine, my pride, my creativity, my very sense of self. So, you want your car back? Fine. Go get it. Those words echoed in my mind like a mantra, a promise to myself. I didn't know how far I was willing to go, but I felt the thrill of chaos whispering sweetly at the back of my mind. The stage was set, and I was ready to unleash a storm that would leave nothing in its wake but the ash of betrayal and the sweet taste of revenge. The moment I stepped outside to confront the reality of my situation, I felt like I was moving in slow motion. My heart thundered in my chest as I approached my Mini Cooper, its once vibrant paint now marred by the ugly scratches that seemed to scream betrayal. I could feel the weight of disbelief pressing down on me, a dense fog that clouded my thoughts. How could Jake, a person I considered a friend, do something so cruel? A part of me wanted to rationalize it, to convince myself it was an accident, a silly mistake. But another part warned me, whispering truths I was too afraid to accept. This was intentional, a calculated move in his game. As I traced my fingers over the damaged paint, memories flooded back like an unwanted tide. I recalled the late nights spent hunched over the hood, restoring every detail of the car, infusing it with pieces of my soul. I had named her Luna, a beacon of my aspirations and hard work. To see her disrespected like this felt like an affront to my very identity. A surge of anger coursed through me, feeling like molten lava bubbling beneath the surface, ready to erupt. Where was the fairness in this? I had done nothing but support him, and in return, I was repaid with betrayal. It was as if someone had ripped away a layer of my skin, exposing a raw, painful vulnerability that I didn't know how to heal. I stood there, grappling with feelings of confusion, rage, and a heartache that felt too heavy to bear. In that moment, I heard laughter erupt from the other side of the street, and my eyes instinctively darted toward the sound. There was Jake, lounging against his shiny new sedan, surrounded by a group of colleagues who looked up to him with admiration. He was animated, gesturing wildly as he recounted some supposed adventure he had with my car. Those familiar faces looked at him with admiration, and my stomach twisted in knots. They had no idea what he was capable of. My blood boiled as I watched him play the role of the charming hero, a far cry from the opportunist I had come to know. Why do I even care? I thought bitterly. He's just another phony, making a fool out of everyone. But it wasn't just Jake's betrayal that cut deep, it was the betrayal of trust, of friendship, of every late-night conversation we had shared over takeout. I had opened my heart to him, and he had twisted it into a weapon to serve his own interests. I leaned against the car, my breath hitching as I fought against the swell of emotions. I wanted to scream. I wanted to lash out and shake him until the truth fell from his lips like broken glass. Instead, I felt a cold resolve settle within me. I would not be a victim in this twisted game. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting deep shadows across the pavement, I imagined the sweet revenge that lay ahead. The thought sent a thrill through me, igniting the fire I had buried beneath layers of confusion and hurt. I could almost hear the gears of my mind whirring as I strategized, envisioning how best to expose him for the fraud he truly was. "You want your car back? Fine. Go get it." The words became my battle cry, galvanizing my spirit. The more I thought about it, the more I could feel the pieces of my plan clicking into place. I couldn't just reclaim my car, I had to reclaim my narrative. He would regret that he ever crossed me. But the rush of determination I felt that day turned out to be a flickering candle in a raging storm. Little did I know, Jake was not just some petty thief, he was a cunning predator who thrived on chaos and manipulation. Each day that passed, my initial anger morphed into something darker, something that threatened to consume me whole. The storm I had felt brewing was now a tempest, and I was caught in the eye of it, spiraling into a whirlwind of despair. As I sought out allies, people I believed shared my disdain for Jake's antics, I found myself met with indifference or outright dismissal. My closest friend, Lisa, whom I'd shared countless confidences with, listened to my plight but responded with a patronizing tone that made my blood boil. "Maybe you're overreacting a bit. It's just a car, after all." The words pierced through me like a blade, a reminder that my world, my struggles were insignificant to those around me. The isolation crept in, slowly suffocating me, and I began to realize that the only person I could rely on was myself. The tension escalated further when I overheard a conversation in the break room between Jake and another colleague. They were discussing a new project he'd spearheaded, and as I listened, my heart plummeted. They were praising him for his vision, unaware it was built on the shattered remnants of my own creativity. My stomach twisted into knots, realization dawning that while I was stewing in my own anger, he was thriving, winning allies and accolades I yearned for. It felt as if the ground beneath me was slipping away, and with it, my sense of belonging. My mental state began to deteriorate. I found myself awake at night, pacing the floor, heart racing as I replayed my encounters with him in my mind. Each memory became a weight, dragging me deeper into despair. The more I plotted my revenge, the more isolated I felt. I stopped reaching out to friends, pushing them away so I wouldn't have to share the raw, furious thoughts swirling in my head. I felt like a ghost, haunting the edges of my own life, waiting for the moment my rage would erupt like a volcano. Then came the day when the humiliation hit its peak. I had decided to confront Jake directly. Fueled by a cocktail of anger and adrenaline, I found him in his office, the air thick with the smell of fresh coffee and self-importance. I demanded an explanation for what he had done to my car, my voice steady but my heart pounding like a war drum. But rather than the confrontation I anticipated, Jake's response was a condescending chuckle that echoed through the room. "Relax, it's just a car. Besides, you should be grateful I didn't write it off." The laughter that followed from his lackeys felt like knives piercing through my skin. It didn't stop there. He casually tossed a couple of crumpled bills onto my desk, compensation for the car that felt like a slap in the face. The moment felt suspended in time, and I could feel my cheeks burn as the laughter continued to ring in my ears, a chorus of mockery that only I could hear. In that moment, I wasn't just confronting Jake, I was facing the reality of my own impotence, and it left me raw and exposed. I stumbled out of the office, barely holding back tears, feeling like I had just been stripped of my dignity. The walls of the gallery felt like they were closing in on me as I navigated the halls, avoiding the concerned gazes of people. I stumbled into my studio, the small sanctuary I had carved out for myself amidst the chaos of emotions swirling in my heart. The door slammed behind me, a reflexive action fueled by anger and hurt, a barrier between me and the unforgiving world outside. The silence enveloped me like a thick fog, but it did little to soothe the tempest raging within. I collapsed onto the worn-out couch, feeling the tears I had been holding back finally spill over. That humiliating encounter with Jake replayed in my mind like a broken record, a haunting melody I couldn't escape. "It's just a car." Those words echoed in my skull, reverberating through every crevice of my shattered self-esteem. I felt small, insignificant, reduced to a character in someone else's story, a footnote in Jake's climb to success. I buried my face in my hands, but the tears only made the storm inside me worsen. Then, something snapped inside me, a realization so powerful and paralyzing, it consumed my thoughts entirely. I was tired of being the victim. Tired of feeling powerless while Jake reaped the rewards of my hard work, my dreams, and my creativity. The rage I had felt earlier began to morph, crystallizing into something sharper, darker, a resolve to take back what was rightfully mine. It was the final straw, and in that moment, I decided I wouldn't just reclaim my Mini Cooper, I would dismantle Jake's empire, brick by brick. As the reality of my decision sank in, I pushed myself off the couch and paced the studio, a renewed fire burning in my veins. I envisioned the meticulous plan forming in my mind, each thought fueling the other, like a wildfire devouring a dry forest. I would need to be clever, calculating, transforming my passion for art into a weapon of retribution. I grabbed my sketchpad, a tool I had used countless times for my art, but today it would serve a different purpose. I began to sketch my plan, scribbling down ideas that initially felt flimsy, but slowly took form. There was something liberating about shifting my focus from despair to action. The very act of planning felt like I was reclaiming my power, piece by piece. My thoughts drifted back to the way Jake had paraded my stolen creativity as his own. The confidence he exuded, the supply of sycophants hanging on to his every word, it all began to illuminate a new path. I would expose him, not just as a fraud but as a manipulator who took advantage of those around him. I would show everyone who he truly was. In that moment, a sense of purpose washed over me, eclipsing the shadow of despair. I would gather evidence of Jake's transgressions, the bits and pieces of my work he had so effortlessly claimed as his own. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Jake had friends in high places, and he was skilled at spinning narratives to his favor. But I had something he didn't: desperation and a fierce will to reclaim what was mine. The turning point came not just as a realization of my anger, but as a profound understanding of what was at stake: my identity, my artistry, and my very future. I was done running away, done hiding in the shadows of his success. I would become the architect of my own retaliation, and revenge would be my medium, my canvas. "You want your car back? Fine. Go get it." The words hung in the air, a promise I made to myself. I could picture the moment vividly, the look on Jake's face when he realized he had underestimated, with my mind racing and a fierce determination igniting my spirit. I sketched out my revenge plan in meticulous detail. Every moment I spent strategizing felt like taking back a piece of myself. This was no longer about just my car, it was about reclaiming my creativity, my dignity, and my narrative. I would turn the tables on Jake and make him pay for everything he had taken from me. Here's how I planned to execute my revenge, step by step. I knew I couldn't just accuse Jake of theft and manipulation without proof. I needed hard evidence that would expose his lies and deceit. Over the next few weeks, I made it a point to document everything I could about our project, the emails, drafts, and any correspondence we had shared. I had saved some of my original sketches and notes, so I started compiling them into a comprehensive timeline that illustrated every instance where Jake had taken credit for my work. I also reached out to other colleagues discreetly, engaging them in casual conversations about the projects Jake had championed. I wanted to see just how much they knew about the origin of those ideas, and whether his reputation was as untouchable as he believed. I even befriended the gallery intern, who often shadowed Jake. She was eager to share tidbits of gossip, and I subtly asked her about his methods. The more I gathered, the more confident I felt. I was building a case. Next, I needed to find a way to turn Jake's friends against him. This would require some clever maneuvering. I decided to approach a colleague named Sarah, who had been vocal about her frustrations with Jake's management style. Under the guise of casual conversation, I subtly expressed my concerns about his treatment of staff and his penchant for taking credit for others' ideas. Over lunch, I carefully planted seeds of doubt, nudging Sarah to consider how often Jake's success coincided with the misfortune of others. The idea was to build an alliance of discontent without revealing my true intentions. I knew that if I could rally a small group of colleagues to question his authority, it would destabilize his influence and give me the public support I needed when the time came to strike. As I crafted my plan, an unexpected opportunity arose. The gallery was hosting an annual art exhibition, and each of the staff was encouraged to showcase their work. This event would be the perfect backdrop for my revenge. I decided to create a series of pieces that depicted the journey of an artist overshadowed by a charismatic fraud, themes of theft, betrayal, and reclaiming one's voice. The pieces were not just canvases, they were bait. I poured all my energy into creating artwork that was raw and reflective of my experiences. I would not only showcase my talent but also create a narrative that alluded to Jake's deceit without naming him outright. The finale would include a piece that, when unveiled, would draw a direct connection to my journey. My Mini Cooper, a beautiful representation of my artistic spirit, would be featured in the center of the exhibit. On the night of the exhibition, I planned to unveil my art in a dramatic fashion. I would invite Jake personally, ensuring he was present to witness the transformation of my despair into something powerful. The invitation would be laced with sarcasm, hinting that this was a moment he would not want to miss. As the crowd gathered, I would narrate the story behind my artwork, subtly weaving in the parallels between the night of the exhibition arrived, electric with anticipation. The gallery buzzed with people, laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the soft strains of music. My heart raced, not just with anxiety but with an exhilarating rush of power. I was ready. As I stood next to my centerpiece, the painting of my beloved Mini Cooper, a stunning explosion of color and emotion, I took a moment to breathe it all in. The canvas pulsated with the raw energy of my journey, my anger, my heartbreak, and ultimately, my reclamation. I could feel the weight of the past slip from my shoulders as I transformed pain into beauty. The crowd moved in waves, gathering around each piece, admiring the stark contrasts, and the stories woven into the fabric of each work. I caught glimpses of familiar faces, colleagues I had once shared laughter with, now looking at my art with genuine admiration. And then, I spotted him. Jake, standing near the entrance, his polished demeanor radiating confidence, unaware of the tempest brewing behind my smile. "Can you believe this?" I murmured to Sarah, who stood beside me, her eyes wide with excitement. "This is it. This is the moment." With my pulse quickening, I stepped forward to the center of the gallery, the spotlight washing over me. I cleared my throat, and the murmurs faded into silence. I knew Jake was watching, and the thought sent a thrill down my spine. "Welcome, everyone," I began, my voice steady, though my insides churned. "Tonight, I want to share a story of betrayal and reclaiming one's voice." I gestured toward my painting, feeling the weight of the audience's gaze. "This is Luna, my Mini Cooper, a symbol of my passion, my independence, and the hard work that has been overshadowed by those who thrive on the efforts of others." I saw Jake's smirk falter, the confidence flickering in his eyes. "What is she doing?" He seemed to think, but I pressed on, the momentum propelling me forward. With every stroke of the brush, I captured not just the beauty of a car, but the spirit of an artist silenced by a fraud who masquerades as a friend while stealing dreams along the way. My words were sharp, each one cutting through the air like a knife. The murmurs began to rise once more, curiosity morphing into intrigue. I could feel my fire igniting theirs. "Jake," I said, letting his name hang in the air, "you took my work, you took my car, but most importantly, you stole my spirit. Everyone here applauded you for my efforts while I stood in the shadows, watching as you built your empire on my creativity." His face turned pale, the facade cracking, revealing a glimpse of the man beneath the charm. The audience shifted uneasily, eyes darting between us, the tension palpable. I could see disbelief etched across his features, and it fueled my resolve even further. But tonight, I take back my narrative. I take back my voice. I gestured towards a series of images projected on the gallery wall, photographs of my original sketches, studio notes, and snippets of emails. Each one a testament to my creativity that he had twisted into his own. Gasps echoed through the crowd, shock spreading like wildfire as the evidence unfolded before them. Jake's arrogance dissipated. I saw fury flash in his eyes, the realization that his carefully crafted world was crumbling around him. "You're making a mistake," he shouted, his bravado crumbling as the exhibition that night was both a triumph and a reckoning, igniting a spark in the gallery that would burn brightly for weeks, if not months, to come. Jake's face, once adorned with the confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable, had morphed into an image of disbelief and rage. As I unveiled his deceit to the world, I felt the weight of my past lifting, the chains of humiliation and sadness shattering like glass. I was no longer a victim, I was a force to be reckoned with. The aftermath, however, was not as clear-cut as I had hoped. The initial applause for my artwork soon turned into whispers, some of admiration, but many filled with uncertainty and gossip. Colleagues I had once considered friends now looked at me with a mix of awe and wariness. The divide was palpable. Those who stood firmly behind Jake seemed to vanish into the shadows, while others began to rally around my cause. But the fallout was swift. Jake, confronted with undeniable evidence of his deception, retaliated. In the weeks that followed, I watched him spiral into a defensive state fueled by desperation. He tried to sway the narrative, crafting a story of his own to undermine my claims, painting me as a bitter artist who couldn't handle rejection. His allies, once loyal, began to question their own judgments. The web of lies he had spun started to unravel, but not without collateral damage. I was called into meetings, scrutinized for my bold confrontation. Many viewed me as an instigator, someone who had disrupted the harmony of the gallery. I could feel the tension in the air, a thick miasma of uncertainty and fear. Some colleagues whispered in corners, unsure of where to align themselves, while others openly supported me, their encouragement fueling my resolve. I learned quickly that creating art was one thing, but navigating this new social landscape required a different kind of creativity, one that involved careful maneuvering through alliances and enmities that felt like a minefield. The gallery owner, bemused by the chaos unfolding, decided to issue a public statement in support of me, citing the importance of integrity in the art world. Undeniably, this was a win, but it left a bitter taste. My work, my passion, had become a battleground for a war that I never chose to fight. I felt a pang of guilt for the inevitable fallout that would come from my revenge. People who had nothing to do with Jake's betrayal were now caught in the crossfire of our conflict. Yet, the spotlight I had sought brought a newfound visibility, and with it, opportunities I never imagined. Offers for solo exhibitions flooded in, and a few patrons expressed interest in my work, eager to support the artist who had found her voice amidst the chaos. But every time I stood before a canvas, the memory of Jake's betrayal seeped into my brushstrokes. I could not escape the truth that my art was forever intertwined with my pain. As the months rolled on, I began to notice subtle changes in Jake's behavior. The once charismatic figure now walked through the gallery with his head down, the bravado stripped away like layers of paint. He was a ghost of the man he once was, his reputation marred by the exposed truths of his opportunism. The colleagues who once admired him looked at him with disdain, and the applause that used to follow his every word turned to silence. I felt a mix of satisfaction and guilt as I witnessed his downfall. While he had taken so much from me, I could not shake the creeping feeling that I had taken something from him, too. But it became clear.
It's 3 a.m., and the glow from my phone screen feels like the only light left in my life. The quiet of the house surrounds me, a stark contrast to the chaos brewing in my heart. I should be sleeping, but every time I close my eyes, I see them, my husband and her, giggling at some inside joke while I sit at home, oblivious and trusting. I can almost hear her laugh, high-pitched and sweet, as if it could drown out the reality of her existence in our lives. If this was a different time, a different place, maybe I could have brushed it off, chalked it up to bad luck and human frailty. But right now, I feel the urge for justice bubbling within me like molten lava, ready to erupt. Let me set the stage for you. I'm Emma, a 32-year-old mom of two beautiful kids who mean the world to me. I've poured my heart and soul into our family for over a decade. I've been the supportive wife, the caretaker, and the partner who believed in the promise of forever. We built a life together, a home with laughter echoing off the walls, a backyard where our children play, and dreams we painted together beneath the stars. But all of that crumbled when I stumbled upon the text messages that shattered my world like broken glass. He, Ryan, my husband, the man I trusted with my everything, had been carrying on an affair with someone I've never met, but whose name feels like acid on my tongue, Lisa. The moment I saw her name flash on his screen, my heart plummeted. I thought I was ready for anything, but the cold reality was like a punch to the gut. I spent hours going back through our history, replaying memories in my mind, piecing together when things had started to unravel. It's terrifying how easily you can be deceived by someone you love. Now, I'm on the brink of unleashing my fury on the very person who thought it was okay to step into my life, to cross boundaries that should have remained sacred. Should I go public? Should I bring the world into my pain? The desire to expose Lisa burns in my chest like wildfire. I want her to feel the weight of my heartbreak, the destruction she's caused, and the betrayal I never saw coming. As I sit here, the clock ticking away the silent hours, I'm torn between rage and despair. I see the two faces who turned my life upside down, Ryan's guilt-ridden, confused expression and Lisa's brazen arrogance shining through her social media posts. It's time for the world to know the truth. But first, I need to gather my thoughts and summon the courage to pull the trigger. Should I go through with it? Should I press send on that post that could expose the truth? I can feel my heart racing as I prepare to share my story, to lay bare the reality of my life for all to see. I'm ready to reclaim my narrative, to stand tall in the face of their betrayal. The world won't turn a blind eye to my pain. Not anymore. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. Each night, I lay in bed next to Ryan, pretending to be asleep while he scrolled through his phone, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in my heart. I had no idea that every time I kissed him goodnight, he was hunting a thrill in someone else's embrace. I remember the moment I confronted him, how the air felt thick and heavy, almost suffocating. The look on his face when I presented the evidence was a mix of shock and guilt, as if I had thrown a bucket of ice water over his head. It was then I realized he was just as much a stranger to me as Lisa was. "Emma, I can explain," he stammered, his voice trembling as if it were about to shatter. I wanted to scream, to throw a lamp at his head, to make him feel the anguish that was radiating off me in waves. Instead, I felt hollow, like a shell of the woman I used to be. My dreams of a perfect family shattered into a million pieces, and with them, any semblance of trust I had in him. Why her? Why Lisa? I wanted to ask him. Was it her laugh that drew him in, or her carefree spirit that made him forget about the weight of our shared years? Was she the embodiment of everything I felt I wasn't anymore? I was just a tired mom trying to balance grocery lists, school drop-offs, and work deadlines while he was out there seeking validation in someone who had no claim on our life. The days turned into a blur of tears and anger. My best friend, Chloe, tried to comfort me, but every kind word felt like rubbing salt into an open wound. "You deserve better, Em," she said, her eyes filled with sympathy. But I felt like a fool for believing in our love story. I could almost hear Lisa's voice in my head, taunting me with her casual confidence. While I was pouring every ounce of myself into raising our kids and keeping the home alive, she was laughing with my husband, enjoying the thrill of something forbidden. I cyber-stalked her, and it made everything worse. Lisa thrived in her glossy, curated world of Instagram posts showcasing brunches, vacations, and cute selfies with Ryan, each one a dagger to my heart. I found a photo of them together, arms intertwined, and it was as if the breath was knocked out of me. The caption, "Life is too short to waste time on anything less than amazing," sparkles emoji, 2 hearts emoji, felt like a cruel joke. Had they ever considered the life we built together? Did she care that her amazing was my nightmare? Every morning, I'd wake up and check his phone, hoping to find something, anything, that could give me answers. I found more messages, more proof of their secretive rendezvous. I was a detective in my own life, piecing together the puzzle of their deceit while I stood on the sidelines, feeling like a spectator in my own marriage. I often thought of my children, their innocent laughter echoing through the halls, oblivious to the turmoil swirling in their mom's heart. I wanted to shield them from the reality of their father's betrayal, but at the same time, my mouth watered at the thought of making Lisa's life as complicated as mine had become. I imagined her embarrassment, the guilt that would seep into her perfect life. I wanted to see her squirm, to know she was not untouchable, that her actions had consequences. It was all-consuming, this need for revenge, an insatiable hunger that gnawed at my soul like a relentless predator. Each day that passed felt heavier than the last, as if I were carrying the weight of a world that no longer cared for my existence. The emotional roller coaster I found myself on was dizzying. One moment, I was a mother trying to keep things together for my children, and the next, I was a woman bent on delivering a reckoning. I started to lose myself in the process. My days were filled with a haze of anger and confusion. I could barely focus at work. My colleagues greeted me with their usual cheery banter, but I was miles away, trapped in a mental prison of betrayal. A small part of me wanted to break down and share my pain, but the other part, the part filled with rage, clenched my jaw and pushed it all down, determined to keep my secret, my plan, and my emotions locked away. As the days turned into weeks, I began to obsess over Lisa. I'd wake up in the early hours of the morning and scroll through her social media profiles, each photo feeling like another punch to the gut. I watched her life unfold like a movie, each post a reminder of what I'd lost. She was a social media influencer, a master of capturing life's best moments. But I saw through it all. I saw the fakeness behind the smiles, the facade of happiness that was built on the foundation of my shattered marriage. The more I saw, the more I ached for revenge. I envisioned her face when the truth came crashing down around her, when her friends and followers found out that she was the homewrecker. I wanted to strip the glamour away, to expose the ugly truth hidden behind her perfectly curated life. In my mind, I started to draft the post that would reveal her secrets, my fingers itching to type the words that would rip her world apart. But life has a way of throwing curveballs. Just when I thought I couldn't feel worse, it did. One evening, I overheard Ryan on a phone call while I was washing the dishes. The sound of water splashing around me drowned out his words. But every now and then, I heard Lisa's name and my heart stopped. For a few fleeting seconds, I was paralyzed, my hands gripping the sink tightly, knuckles white. "Yeah, I miss you too," he said, his voice smooth and casual, as if he were discussing the weather. "We can figure out the details later. Just give me a little time, all right?" I felt the rage boil in my veins, hot and consuming. It was one thing to have a fleeting affair, but to hear him talking to her like that, like she was the one who mattered most, it sent me spiraling. I stopped washing the dishes and leaned against the counter, my heart racing as I fought the urge to confront him right then and there. The facade was crumbling, I could feel it. The anguish twisted in my stomach like a knife, deepening with each syllable. The next night, I stumbled across a text that would mark the tipping point. "Can't wait to be with you again this weekend. Just us." I felt like I had been shot. The urgency of their plans felt like a declaration of war against the life we built together. I was no longer just a wronged wife, I was a warrior preparing for battle. I turned to Chloe, desperate to share my pain. "I can't do this anymore," I confessed, my voice cracking as I held back tears. "I can't keep pretending everything is fine when I'm falling apart." Chloe looked at me, her eyes wide with understanding as the gravity of my heartache sank in. "Emma, you deserve to be happy. You have every right to stand up for yourself. You can't just let them get away with this." Her words were like a lifeline thrown into the turbulent sea of my emotions, pulling me back from the brink of despair. But what did that mean? What did standing up for myself look like when I had been so profoundly disrespected? That night, as I lay awake with my heart pounding in my chest, the truth began to crystallize. I couldn't keep living in a state of paralysis, trapped in my own mind, replaying the endless loop of betrayal and hurt. I felt the fire igniting within me, raw and powerful, and suddenly it all clicked. I wasn't just a victim, I was a force to be reckoned with. I pulled out my phone, the screen shining in the darkness like a beacon. I began to type, my fingers moving almost of their own accord. My heart raced with each word, as if I were pouring molten rage onto the screen. I had never been one to seek conflict, but this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about reclaiming my power, my dignity. The words flowed out like water from a broken dam. To those who think they can step into my life and steal joy that's not theirs to take, let me remind you that the truth always finds a way out. You might think you're living the dream, but it will all come crashing down. I refuse to be silent while you play house with my husband. I paused, breathless, as I read over my message. Each sentence felt like a small victory, a rebellion against years of quiet suffering. But it wasn't just a post. It was a testament to my strength, a declaration of war against the lies that had invaded my life. I realized I wanted Lisa to feel the weight of her actions, to confront the consequences of her choices. I wanted her to know that she was no longer a shadow lurking in the corners of my life. She was front and center, and I was ready to take a stand. As I hovered over the post button, I felt a surge of adrenaline course through me. The fear was still there, a nagging doubt that whispered about the fallout, the damage this could unleash. But the voice of anger was louder, the urge for justice more persuasive. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my narrative, about letting the world know that I wouldn't be a victim any longer. In that moment, I made the decision that would change everything. I would no longer be the quiet, hurt wife, nursing my wounds in solitude. I would boldly share my story, my truth, and in doing so, I would begin to heal. I envisioned Lisa seeing the post, her smug smile turning to disbelief, panic, and ultimately shame. I imagined the looks on her friends' faces as they read the words I had crafted with so much pain. My finger hovered over the screen, my heart racing with excitement and fear. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes for a second, and then pressed send. The moment the words went live, it felt as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I sat there, staring at the screen, my heart pounding as the reality of my decision set in. I had taken a leap into the unknown, a leap that felt terrifying yet exhilarating. Suddenly, the doubt that had plagued me for so long began to dissipate, replaced by a surge of empowerment as dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. I sat in the quiet of my kitchen, the adrenaline still coursing through me. My heart was racing, my hands trembling with both fear and excitement. The post was live. I could hardly believe it. I knew I had to prepare for the aftermath. My revenge plan was in motion, and I needed to be strategic about it. 1. Document everything. The first step was a no-brainer. I began compiling everything related to Ryan and Lisa's affair, screenshots of texts, photos of their social media interactions, and even timestamps from our shared family calendar that pointed to his lies. I wanted concrete evidence to back up my claims, should anyone question the validity of what I was about to expose. It was important for me to have this arsenal of proof, not just to protect myself, but to serve as a reminder of the reality I was living. 2. Enlist allies. I reached out to a few close friends, those who had seen the cracks in my marriage before I did. I needed support, both emotionally and logistically. Chloe was my first call. I did it, I said, my voice quaking with a mix of victory and fear. I posted about them. I need you to help me spread the word. She promised to share my post and encourage others to do the same. The more people who knew, the more power I'd reclaim over the narrative. I also contacted a few trusted acquaintances of Ryan's, people who had always seen our family as a unit. I wanted them to hear my side before Ryan could spin his own narrative to make himself look like the victim. 3. Create a countdown. I knew I had to time the fallout perfectly. I calculated the weekend when Ryan would next be free from work and scheduled to see Lisa again. I wanted to ensure that my post was fresh in everyone's minds when they came together. I imagined their plans spiraling into chaos as they realized that I had blown the lid off their secret. I envisioned Ryan's face when he discovered that the people he trusted the most had turned against him, armed with my truth. I was going to infiltrate their weekend plans and turn it into my own version of a friendly gathering, one filled with witnesses to the fallout. 4. Prepare for confrontation. I knew that I needed to confront Ryan head-on after the post went viral. I started rehearsing what I would say, crafting a script in my mind that combined strength with clarity. I wanted him to see the gravity of his actions, not just the betrayal, but how he shattered my trust, our family, and the lives of our children. I was determined to break down his defenses and make him own his actions, while also preparing for his inevitable attempts to manipulate the situation. I would stand my ground, speaking my truth with unwavering confidence. 5. Social media blitz. I began crafting additional posts to go live in the days leading up to the weekend. I wanted to create an avalanche of awareness about the affair. I wrote about the realities of infidelity, how it feels to be deceived, and the emotional toll it takes on families. I included hashtags like #CheatersExposed, #infidelity, and #truthmatters in the hopes of reaching a wider audience. I encouraged my friends to share their own experiences with betrayal, creating a community of support around my situation. I wanted people to rally behind me, to remind me that I wasn't alone in this fight. 6. Gather evidence of his lies. While I continued my digital search for revenge, I began to gather evidence of his lies. I strategically arranged for my friends to catch Ryan in the act of deceit. I instructed Chloe to invite him to a gathering under the guise of wanting to have a family-friendly weekend with the kids. It was a perfect cover, and I knew it would create the opportunity I needed for the confrontation. As the weekend approached, my heart danced a chaotic rhythm between anxiety and exhilaration. I felt like a beast poised on the edge of a cliff, ready to leap into the fray. I went through every message, every photo, honing in on the perfect chaos I was about to unleash. The countdown was real now. Just 2 days left until I would turn my pain into a weapon of justice. The day finally arrived. I woke up with butterflies in my stomach, the thrill of impending revenge coursing through my veins. I donned a simple, yet striking outfit that made me feel confident, my favorite dress that hugged my curves just right, my makeup on point, ready to reveal to the world the fierce woman I had become. This day was about more than just revenge, it was about reclaiming my identity, my voice, and my power. I dropped the kids off with my parents, knowing they would be safe while I played the role of the unassuming wife. The moment I stepped into Chloe's house where the gathering would take place, I felt an electric charge in the air. Friends had begun to arrive, and I noticed many of them giving me sympathetic smiles, their eyes filled with unspoken understanding. They had seen the hurt, the pain I had been carrying for far too long. I could feel their support surrounding me, a protective shield against the storm that was about to erupt. Ryan arrived later, blissfully unaware of the trap that lay in wait for him. He greeted everyone with a casual smile, completely oblivious to the tension brewing beneath the surface. I watched him, a mix of anger and sadness swirling inside me. How could he be so careless? Had he truly thought he could continue living a double life with no consequences? I was ready to shatter that illusion. As the evening progressed, laughter and chatter filled the air. The children played in the background, normalcy contrasting sharply with the storm about to unfold. I caught Ryan stealing glances at his phone, a nervous habit I had come to recognize, and it filled me with a sense of satisfaction. He was on edge, and for the first time, it was because of his own choices. Then, at the perfect moment, I decided it was time. "Hey everyone!" I called out, my voice steady as I stood, commanding attention. The room quieted. Eyes shifted to me, curiosity piqued. "I know this is a lovely gathering, but I have something important I'd like to share." Chloe exchanged a glance with me, a silent reassurance. I could see the anticipation in her eyes, knowing full well the gravity of what was about to unfold. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of 1,000 emotions crash over me. It was now or never. "Ryan," I said, my gaze fixed on him, unwavering. "We need to talk. And I think everyone deserves to hear this." I paused for dramatic effect, letting the tension simmer in the air. I could see the color drain from his face. The room grew silent, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. "Do you remember last week?" I continued, my voice rising as I recounted the tale of betrayal. "When I found the texts on your phone? Or did you think you could?" The air in the room grew heavy as the weight of my words sank in. I could feel the collective breath of my friends held in anticipation, and the shock on Ryan's face was priceless. It was a mixture of fear and disbelief, as if he were a deer caught in headlights. I relished the moment, the sweet taste of justice mingling with the bitterness of betrayal. "What are you talking about, Emma?" he stammered, trying to regain his composure, his voice trembling ever so slightly. "This isn't the place for this. We can talk about it later." But there was no later, not anymore. "No," I said firmly, cutting him off. "The time for secrets is over. Lisa, the woman you so brazenly decided to betray our family with, she's not just some fling. We all deserve to know the truth about who you really are." I could feel the room shift, the tension morphing into a palpable energy. Gasps echoed from the gathered friends, some exchanging horrified glances as the truth unraveled like a poorly stitched seam. "This is just a misunderstanding," Ryan protested weakly, but I could see him faltering, the facade crumbling. "You think this is a misunderstanding?" I retorted, my voice rising in volume, filled with a fierce determination that surprised even me. "I have screenshots, messages, and proof of everything. You've been lying to me, to our friends, to our children. You've destroyed everything we built together, and for what? A thrill? A moment of distraction?" The faces around us varied in expressions, some looked sympathetic, while others held anger towards Ryan. I found solace in knowing that I wasn't alone in this fight. My friends were rallying behind me, and I could almost hear their unspoken support. Ryan's expression shifted from confidence to sheer panic as he realized that the crowd was no longer on his side. "Emma. Please," he pleaded, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Let's talk about this privately." But I was done talking privately. I wanted the world to see him for who he truly was. I turned and addressed the room, letting the words pour out of me with a cathartic release. "For those of you who don't know, Ryan has been having an affair. He's been lying to me while pretending to be the devoted husband." I pointed at him with conviction, letting my anger fuel my voice. "And this is not just my battle. It's a shared experience for anyone who's ever been deceived." I could see Lisa's name hanging in the air, a specter that haunted this moment, and it felt liberating to finally say it openly. "It's not just the act of cheating that hurts, it's the breach of trust, the loss of what you thought was real. I won't remain silent about it any longer." As I spoke, I watched the reactions from my friends. Some were nodding in agreement, others were whispering in disbelief. I saw Chloe's eyes shine with pride. She knew the weight of my struggle and had stood by me through the darkest moments. The support I felt from them was like a warm embrace, igniting a fire in my heart. Finally, I turned back to Ryan, whose expression had shifted from denial to despair. "I hope you know that this is just the beginning. I'll be sharing this story with everyone, and I won't let you manipulate the narrative." At that moment, as I held Ryan's gaze, I felt liberated. It was as if I had uncovered a new part of myself,
You know that feeling when the world just flips upside down, and everything you thought you knew dissolves into a fog of betrayal? That was me, standing in the middle of the campus quad on a crisp October afternoon, the leaves swirling around my feet like a chaotic whirlpool of all the emotions I was struggling to process. The sun was bright, casting long shadows across the brick paths, but all I could see was the silhouette of him, Ryan, laughter spilling from his lips as he surrounded himself with his new friends, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just a few feet away. I can still feel the weight of the betrayal sinking into my chest, a thick, suffocating fog that wrapped around my heart. Just a few weeks prior, I had been his world. We shared everything, late-night study sessions in cramped dorm rooms, coffee breaks between classes filled with dreams and plans. I was the girl he told his friends about, the one he promised he would never hurt. But promises are fragile, and trust, well, it can shatter in an instant. It started innocently enough. I had noticed the little things, the way he seemed distracted, the way his laughter didn't reach his eyes anymore. I brushed them off, convincing myself I was just being paranoid. But then the texts came, too frequent and too intimate, and in one suffocating moment, my heart shattered when I discovered he'd been with someone else, right under my nose. Her name was Sarah, another student in our sociology class, someone who looked exactly like the girls I had always felt insecure about. I was furious, heartbroken, and most importantly, filled with a desperate need for retribution. The moment I saw them together, standing too close, whispering in a way that felt intimate, something dark coiled within me. I could feel the rage boiling, simmering under the surface, waiting for any excuse to bubble up. I should have walked away, confronted him, or even just cried it out with friends over a tub of ice cream. But deep down, I knew I needed something else, a plan. I wanted him to feel the fear that I felt, to understand just how it felt to be hunted and haunted by what he had done. And so, as I watched him laugh, clueless and carefree, the gears started turning in my mind. What if I made him think he was being watched? What if I became the ghost in his life, the shadow that lingered just out of sight? I wanted to see the worry in his eyes, the confusion. I wanted him to realize that his actions had consequences. It was a twisted, dark idea, but one that consumed me entirely, pushing me deeper into a world of his own making. Little did he know, I was about to become the phantom of his nightmares. The thrill of the unknown, that intoxicating rush of revenge, began to seep into my veins. I was no longer just the heartbroken girl, I was the architect of his fear. And as I turned to leave the quad, blending into the crowd of students who were blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface, I couldn't help but smile. This was just the beginning. I spent the next few days lurking in the shadows, carefully plotting my every move. Each moment was a mix of exhilaration and anxiety, as my heart raced with the thrill of the game I was about to play. I watched him from a distance, noting his routines, who he hung out with, and the places he frequented. It felt a little like a scene from a movie, where the villain is carefully orchestrating their grand plan, all while maintaining an innocent facade. Only, in this case, I was both the villain and the victim, the lines of right and wrong blurred in the haze of my anger. One day, as I followed him from class to the library, a wave of doubt washed over me. Was I really going through with this? Did I really want to sink to this level? But the memory of his laughter with her, the way he looked at me with that cold indifference, was enough to push me forward. I had to remind him of what he lost, to resurrect the ghost of our relationship that he had so carelessly discarded. I waited until the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with colors that mirrored my tumultuous emotions. The campus transformed under the evening lights, shadows creeping out from alleyways and corners, making it the perfect backdrop for my revenge. I donned dark clothing, blending into the night like a vengeful spirit. This was my moment to strike. The first night involved simple distractions, moving his backpack a few feet from where he left it, placing an ominous note written in hastily scrawled letters on a bench he frequently sat on. "You're not alone." It was vague enough to keep him guessing, but pointed enough to spark unease. I watched from a distance, my heart hammering as I observed Ryan's confusion turn to anxiety as he found the note. The way his brow furrowed and his eyes darted around was intoxicating. I felt a twisted sense of power surge through me as he looked around, as if searching for an answer in the dark, just like I had been searching for answers after discovering his betrayal. For days, I escalated my tactics. I left more notes, sketchy reminders of my presence. I would hide in nearby bushes, watching as he jumped every time a gust of wind rustled the leaves. I'd occasionally bump into him, acting like a bystander, forcing a smile while I reveled in his discomfort. Even the smallest twitch in his demeanor felt like a victory to me. But it wasn't just fun and games, it was also deeply unsettling. The line between reality and my revenge had become fuzzy. I replayed every moment of our relationship in my mind, scrutinizing every sweet memory while reminding myself of the betrayal. The emotional push and pull was exhausting. I would lay in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with my conscience. Was I becoming the monster he had made of me? As the weeks wore on, the thrill of my plan began to fade into something darker. I could see the toll this was taking on him. His carefree laughter had been replaced with a nervous, furrowed brow, and it struck me that I had turned him into a shadow of the person I once loved. I found myself questioning my own motives. Was this revenge or merely an act of desperation to regain some semblance of control in my life after he had shattered my heart? One evening, as I watched him from a distance, I caught sight of him with his new friends, the same ones he had laughed with so easily when all was right in his world. Now, they were scanning the area with worried expressions, whispering among themselves about the strange occurrences surrounding Ryan. A chill swept through me as I observed the anxiety etched on their faces. It was a moment of clarity, one that struck like a bolt of lightning. I was no longer merely playing a game of revenge, I was responsible for instilling fear, a feeling I had so desperately fought against when I discovered his betrayal. In my twisted sense of justice, I had relinquished my own humanity. The thrill of seeing Ryan jump at shadows and glance nervously over his shoulder began to feel like a poison coursing through my veins, tainting the satisfaction I once sought. There I was, cloaked in darkness, but instead of feeling powerful, I felt hollow, the joy of my revenge fading like the dying light of the day. The humiliation hit hard when I overheard one of Ryan's friends mention how worried they were about him. "He doesn't even want to be alone anymore," she said, her voice laced with genuine concern. Suddenly, I felt sick. I had successfully turned him into a prisoner of his own mind, a shell of the guy I used to know, and it gnawed at me. I wanted him to feel the pain of betrayal, yes, but I never wanted to ruin his life. That night, as I lay in my darkened room, the shadows felt different, heavier. They were no longer filled with the electric thrill of my plan but weighed down by the guilt and doubt I was now grappling with. I tossed and turned, my mind repeating the mantra, "This isn't who I am." I could hear the echoes of my friends' laughter, feel their warmth, and I suddenly longed for that connection again. Instead, I was isolating myself, pushing everyone away while I dwelled in this dark space of retaliation. The following day, I decided to change my tactics. I hoped maybe I could find some balance, alleviate the torment I was inflicting. I left a note for him, one that felt like a glimpse of my fractured self: "You don't have to be afraid." It was cryptic, yes, but meant to convey that I was done playing games. I didn't want to terrorize him, I just wanted him to understand the weight of what he had done. But when I saw him receive the note, trembling hands, eyes wide with confusion and fear, I realized I had underestimated his response. As he read the words, he looked around, searching for answers, relief spilling over into the worried expressions of his friends who had begun to gather around him. They whispered, glancing at me, and for the first time, I felt myself being pulled back into the shadow of my own creation, a mere spectator to the chaos I had unleashed. As the days passed, I noticed something darker brewing inside me. The lines I had tried to navigate became grotesquely blurred. I suffered from sleepless nights, riddled with guilt, yet I continued my charade. I couldn't bring myself to face Ryan directly, terrified he'd see the truth in my eyes, the anguish behind the mask I wore. Instead, I slipped further into my role as his specter, haunting him with a chilling presence that kept him unsettled. Then came a moment that would shatter the fragile composure I had clung to. I overheard Ryan talking to Sarah, his voice strained. "I can't take this anymore. I feel like I'm being hunted," he said, his voice breaking, revealing a vulnerability I hadn't anticipated. My heart sank, a deep ache seeping into my chest. I had become the very thing I had loathed. It was humiliating to realize that the very pleasure I had drawn from the fear I instilled in him had transformed into a sickening weight inside me. I stood against the wall, hidden in the shadows of a nearby building, my heart racing as I listened to him pour out his soul to Sarah, who seemed as perplexed as I felt. She was trying to comfort him, but all I could think was, "What have I done?" "I was just trying to get back at you," I whispered under my breath, as if that could somehow absolve me of the darkness consuming my actions. It felt surreal, listening to my ex-boyfriend, the one I had loved so deeply, voice his turmoil, yet here I was, the source of that turmoil, his phantom, his unseen tormentor. As I leaned against the rough brick wall, the chill of the evening air slipped under my skin, amplifying my sense of unease. I closed my eyes, and suddenly I was back in that moment of betrayal, the piercing realization of his unfaithfulness flooding back with a vengeance. But instead of fueling my anger, it ignited something else, a deep, gnawing regret. I had been hurt, yes, but I had crossed an unforgivable line. I was not just a heartbroken girl anymore, I was a puppet master tugging on the strings of someone else's life, and I was losing control. Watching Ryan break down in front of Sarah, a girl I had once been jealous of, set off a chain reaction of emotions. The initial thrill of revenge was replaced by a pit in my stomach. This wasn't justice, this was cruelty. As he leaned against a tree, shoulders trembling, it hit me like a wave, the final straw had come crashing down. I was not just ruining his life, I was also dismantling my own sense of self in the process. What was I doing? Who had I become? The anger that had been my fuel now felt like poison, suffocating the remnants of my former self. I realized that I didn't want him to suffer endlessly, I wanted him to understand the pain he had caused me, to recognize the gravity of his actions, not to be trapped in a web of anxiety that I had spun. And there it was, the turning point, the moment I decided I needed to end this charade. I watched as Ryan wiped tears from his eyes, frustration bubbling up as he confronted the source of his fears, the ghost I had created. The sight of him like this was like a dagger twisting in my heart. I wanted to scream out, to tell him it was me all along, to confess that I had orchestrated this nightmare. But the fear of revealing myself and the shame of my actions paralyzed me. Staring into the abyss of his despair, I felt a profound sense of compassion transform the bitterness I clung to. I had to take responsibility for my actions, to break this cycle of revenge that had morphed into a cruel game. Instead of lurking in the shadows, it was time to emerge, to confront the mess I had made and reclaim my identity. That night, I didn't leave a note or follow him from class. Instead, I sat alone in my room, wrestling with the duality of my existence, between the heartbroken girl desperate for closure and the vengeful specter I had become. I needed to find a way to let go, to forgive him for what he had done, but more importantly, to forgive myself. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I thought about what had once brought us together, the laughter, the shared dreams, the love we had for one another. It was those memories that now felt like distant echoes, a reminder of the person I used to be before the betrayal consumed me. I needed to create a plan, but this time, it wouldn't be about revenge, it would be about closure. The revenge plan, a path toward healing one. Anonymity and revelation, I decided that if I wanted to end this cycle, I had to reveal my identity but in a way that allowed me to step back from the vengeful persona I had adopted. I would write him a heartfelt letter, sharing my feelings of betrayal and hurt, and explaining how my actions stemmed from that pain. I would leave the letter in a place he frequented, like the library desk where we used to study together, ensuring he found it unexpectedly. 2. A confrontation. After he read the letter, I planned to confront him. Not in a hostile way, but as someone who wanted to talk and find closure. I knew this wouldn't be easy, and I anticipated that he might be defensive or even angry. I wanted him to see the real consequences of his actions, but more importantly, I wanted us to discuss the hurt and betrayal we had both experienced. 3. A new beginning. I recognized that healing could only come from understanding. So, in that confrontation, I would suggest that we meet for coffee, an innocent setting where we could both express ourselves honestly. I would tell him that I was ready to move on, but first, we needed to address the chaos I had inflicted on him. 4. Genuine apology. This part would be crucial. I had to apologize for the revenge I had enacted. I needed to acknowledge that while his actions hurt me deeply, what I had done in return was unhealthy and wrong. I planned to let him know that my intent was never to ruin his life, it was simply to make him understand that actions have consequences. I hoped this would lead to a moment of honesty, where Ryan could express his regret for cheating and we could both find some semblance of closure. 5. Setting boundaries. After our conversation, I would set clear boundaries for myself and for him. I had to make it clear that I wouldn't be lingering in his life as a haunting presence anymore. I wanted to reclaim my own happiness and encourage him to do the same, so I would suggest we take time apart, focusing on ourselves. This was about healing and moving forward, even if it meant doing so separately. 6. The final note. The last step would involve a final note where I declared my intention to step away completely from his life. I would document everything I had learned from this experience, how I had lost sight of who I was in my desire for revenge, and how I now recognized the importance of self-respect and healing. I wanted him to know that while I might not be in his life anymore, I wished him well and hoped he could grow from this experience. The obstacles ahead. But even as I mapped out this new plan, doubt lingered. Would Ryan understand my intentions? What if my confession led to anger instead of understanding? Would he even feel remorse for how he treated me or see me as just another ghost from his past? I was terrified of the vulnerability this new plan required. Sharing my true feelings meant opening myself up to the possibility of more hurt, but I knew I had to take the risk. I also had to consider his emotional state. If he was still grappling with the fear I had instilled in him, how would he react to my letter? Would he find it unsettling or enlightening? Questions swirled in my mind like the autumn leaves outside my window, drifting aimlessly without resolution. But I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I was done with this shadowy existence. It was time to step into the light, to face the consequences of my actions with courage. The confrontation. The day came. I sat in a small cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee swirling around me, a contrast to the knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. I could see through the window as students passed by, laughter filling the air, a world I felt so distant from. With each minute that ticked by, my resolve wavered. Would he show up? Would he even want to talk to me after everything? And then, he walked through the door. The moment our eyes met, a wave of emotions flooded over me. Ryan looked different, more haggard, shadows under his eyes betraying the sleepless nights he had endured. But there was also a flicker of determination on his face. He walked over, tension crackling in the air between us. "Hey?" His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Hey?" I gestured to the empty seat across from me, my heart racing as he sat down. Silence enveloped us like a thick fog. We both opened our mouths to speak, only to close them again. The moment stretched, heavy with unsaid words. I could see the apprehension in his eyes, the way his fingers fidgeted with the hem of his hoodie. I knew he was still haunted, still afraid. Finally, I broke the silence, words tumbling out in a mix of urgency and fear. "I wrote you a letter." I reached into my bag and pulled it out, sliding it across the table. "I think you should read it." His brow furrowed as he picked it up, hesitating, eyes darting from the note to my face. There was a flicker of recognition, of curiosity. He opened the letter, his expression shifting as he read my words, each sentence a fragment of my heart laid bare, each confession a piece of my soul exposed. "I wanted you to understand," I continued, my voice shaky yet resolute. "When I found out about you and Sarah, I was devastated. I felt betrayed, lost. I didn't know how to cope or how to make sense of my feelings. So, I lashed out in a terrible way." He looked up, pain etched across his features, and I could see the moment the realization hit him. "That was you?" he asked, the tremor in his voice betraying a mix of fear and disbelief. I nodded. "I didn't want to hurt you. I just wanted you to feel what I felt. But instead, I became the person I hated." His eyes softened, and for the first time, I could see vulnerability in him that mirrored my own. His shoulders slumped slightly, and the tension in the air began to dissipate. "I'm sorry," he said, almost too quietly. "I never wanted to hurt you. I messed up, and I didn't think about the consequences. I didn't think about you." The words hung between us, heavy with the weight of our shared pain. My breath caught in my throat, and the realization that we both had been victims of our own choices hung in the air like a thick fog. "I don't want to be angry anymore," I confessed. "I don't want this to define us. I want us both to heal." As I spoke, I felt a strange sense of liberation wash over me. The chains of anger and vengeance I had wrapped around myself for weeks began to loosen, breaking under the weight of our shared vulnerability. It was a moment of reckoning, not just for Ryan, but for me as well. Ryan looked down at the table, a mix of emotions playing across his face: regret, shame, and a hint of relief. "I never meant for things to end up this way," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I messed up, and I thought losing you was the worst thing that could happen. But this. What you did. It scared me in a way I never expected. I felt like I was being hunted, and now I can see how that was your pain mirrored back at me. I deserve that fear for what I did to you." As he spoke, I felt the knot in my stomach loosen further. This was the conversation I had longed for but had never imagined would happen this way. Two broken souls, sitting across from each other, each striving for understanding amidst the carnage our actions had created. "I don't want you to feel like you're being hunted anymore," I said softly. "I know, that fear. I've lived with it. But I'm here now, and I want us both to be free. Not from each other, but from this." I gestured between us, the unresolved tension and hurt that had clung to our past like a dark cloud. Ryan nodded, his expression softening as he took in my words. "I never wanted to lose you. You were my safe place, and I destroyed that. I wanted to feel something different, but I didn't realize how much I valued what we had until it was gone." His honesty struck a chord deep within me. I had wanted him to suffer, but hearing him admit his mistakes, witnessing his vulnerability, shifted something inside me. I was tired of carrying the weight of revenge. It was exhausting, and in that moment, I could see that forgiveness could be the most empowering form of closure for both of us. We talked for hours, unraveling the complex web of emotions that had ensnared us both. Conversations flowed freely as we aired our grievances, our fears, and our regrets. I learned about the pressure he faced, the overwhelming expectations at home, and the way he had sought escape in the wrong places. He learned about the darkness I had spiraled into, the loss of self amidst the chaos of betrayal. The moment felt cathartic, almost healing. As we shared our thoughts, I felt the burden of resentment begin to lift. Maybe revenge wasn't the answer, maybe it was empathy and understanding. I could see his struggle reflected in my own, and it became clear that neither of us was beyond redemption. When the sun began to set, casting warm hues of orange and pink across the sky, I felt a sense of finality settle over us. It was time to put the past behind us. I reached across the table, and he met my hand with a tentative touch. "Thank you for being honest with me," he said, his voice earnest. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but it means everything that you're willing to move forward." "I'm not doing this for you," I replied, my heart pounding with sincerity. "I'm doing it for myself. I want to reclaim my life, my happiness. And I hope you can do the same." In that moment, something shifted. We weren't just ex-lovers caught in a web of betrayal anymore, we were two individuals seeking closure and understanding.